On this episode, have you ever been to a bioretention system with a big old hole around the outlet pit and you're wondering what's going on? In this episode, we will tell you 2 common reasons why that subsidence is happening. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. Yesterday afternoon, I was out on site at a bioretention system that's not in great condition and it needs some rehabilitation. And while I was there, I spotted a couple of problems, and one of them, it's a problem that's not super regular, but when it does occur, it's a little bit of a pain in the backside. So I took a few photographs and I wanted to use this video to show you what that problem is and explain why it's occurring. So if you ever come across it, you've got a little bit of a leg up to go, okay, I know the couple of reasons that can cause this to occur. Let's go check that they are, why it's occurring, and then you're in a good position to figure out what to do next. So what's the problem? The problem is subsidence around the outlet pit in bioretention systems. Here we have a photograph. I'm going to refer to my laptop, but I'll pop the photographs up on the screen for you. Here we have a picture of the bioretention system. Now you can see there's a couple of problems. Firstly, it's got no plants in it. That's a problem, but we're not talking about that today. You can see in the background of the photograph, there's the outlet pit, and in front of it, there's this erosion, there's this hole appearing, and that's the subsidence that we're talking about. And the reason it's a problem, of course, is that when there's this hole and this subsidence, it allows water to shortcut, so it doesn't go through the filter media itself and get treated, but in fact, it goes down that hole straight into the under drainage pipe at the base, and then it just flows away, just like it would if the bioretention system wasn't even there. So, to be able to explain what's going on here, you need to know a couple of things about this system. Really need to know one thing about this system, and that is the fact that there is one under drainage pipe in it. You can see in the foreground of this photograph that there is the PVC pipe just poking its head about 100 mils above the surface there. That's the flush out point for the under drainage pipe. So that goes down vertically for about 500 mils below the surface, then turns 90 degrees and runs horizontally all the way and connects into the outlet pit. So it runs horizontally away from us in this photograph and connects into the outlet pit there. Let's now take a closer look at the subsidence. So if we go to this photograph here, we can see that it's quite significant. It's about 300 mils deep there. It's really quite a hole. It's getting worse in a few different spots rather than others. But the point is that because that under drainage pipe is pretty shallow, only around that 500 mils, and I'm just estimating this, we've got subsidence pretty much all the way down to that pipe. So the water's shortcutting really, really easily. Really easily. I said that already. No dramas. So there are 2 potential causes of this. Sometimes they can happen separately, but sometimes they can happen together. And this site, they happen together. So the first of those causes is, you can see in this photograph here, that the pit, for whatever reason, is a bit of a higgledy-piggledy mess of different bits of concrete there. There's like a circular riser at the base, and then there's the square pit sitting on top of it, and they've laid a concrete slab around it and joined various bits of concrete. It's really quite a mess. And the problem that this causes is that when someone then, because the pit gets installed first, the hole is dug for the bioretention system, the pipework in the pit gets installed, and then all the filter media and the under drainage material, all of that stuff gets laid afterwards. The problem is, imagine that you're coming here to try and lay this sandy loam filter media, and you're trying to backfill in around all those different odd shapes of this pit. It's essentially going to be impossible to do that. Think about trying to compact the filter media underneath that lip in a meaningful manner. It's like if you've ever done a paving job and it's eroded out underneath the paving and you've then tried to fix it by jamming sand back in underneath it. It just doesn't work. So the first cause of this problem is when the pit is not laid or has a nice, neat finish around it. Now, I'm not necessarily saying it has to be perfectly smooth, like a polished surface, because that can be a problem in itself, because a polished surface would be really smooth and water would just run straight down the side of it. So having a little bit of roughness is okay, but when a pit is all higgledy-piggledy like this, with lots of overhangs and little gaps that you can't get filter media into, inevitably, when the filter media is laid, it's not laid perfectly, there's holes in there, and water finds its way into those holes and finds its way down the edge of all this higgledy-piggledy mess, and it slowly, ever so slowly, starts eroding away the filter media and carrying that down into the under drainage pipe at the base, and then from the under drainage pipe, the water carries it into the pit and then out through the outlet pipe. And eventually, it starts really small, but eventually it can grow and grow and grow, and you can end up with really big holes. This is by no means the biggest hole I've ever seen in this instance, but it's a pretty good example of it. So the lesson here is, don't lay pits that are either any of these things, actually, super smooth on the edge, because you'll create a really smooth transition that water's like, sweet, I'm going to run straight down that smooth edge. But at the other extreme of this, don't lay an outlet pit that is either really higgledy-piggledy like this, or has really large overhangs that it's hard to compact filter media underneath, because that will also create gaps that the water wants to get into and causes the erosion. So this is cause number one. But the thing here is we've also got cause number two. And it's not always the case that both happen together, but in this particular system it did. And which is why it's a really good example to talk about this. And so the next problem is with how the under drainage pipe connects into the pit itself. This photograph is of what that connection should look like. So you can see in this case, it's an older system, so it has a corrugated, flexible pipe as the under drains. That's fine. That's not a problem. There are different challenges compared if you use PVC to flexible pipe, but both can work. But what's good about this particular picture here, which is from a nearby system, is that you can see how the pipe is really nicely well sealed into the pit. You can see all that mortar that has been placed around the pipe. It's sealed up beautifully. There's no room for water to leak around that pipe. Now have a look at this photograph. I'll show you it in just a second, which is a photograph of the system that we were just looking at that has the problem. Now, I've taken this photograph a little bit too close, but what you need to know here is that just above this photograph, just out of shot, and sorry that it's actually terribly out of focus, but like it's down an outlet pit. It was a hard photograph to take. Just out of shot at the top of this photograph is the base of the corrugated iron. It's not iron, the corrugated flexible plastic pipe. And what's happened in this, they haven't done a really good job of sealing the pipe in this. Probably when they've gone to cut the hole in the pit for the pipe, they've done some damage and accidentally made it much bigger than it needed to be. And so they've stuck the pipe in and they've tried to mortar it all up, but at some point that's broken. And what you're looking at here is the hole just beneath the pipe. So the pipe's just above this out of shot. What you're looking at is a hole that's about 100 mils in diameter, or thereabouts, just breaking through into the base of the filter media and the drainage gravel. And so you can see that right in the middle of the shot, you can see a little bit of loose gravel sitting there, and you can see a bunch of sandy filter media. And so this is the problem. If the outlet pipe is not really neatly connected into the outlet pit, then what you've got is this preferential flow path where any water that does get down through the filter media is like, yeah, you know what, I could go through those small irritating perforations in the ag pipe, or I could just run straight through this giant hole underneath it. And of course, that's an easier flow path. That's a preferential flow path, and it'll start flowing that way in quite large quantities. And slowly over time, if you're unlucky, it can start to take away the drainage gravel, and it can then start to take away the coarse sand that's on top of it, and it can start to take away the filter media. And eventually you take away enough of that, and everything on top just slumps in, and you get the subsidence that we saw in the first video. And that can happen even if the outlet pit was really nicely laid. It was just a nice circular or smooth finish, no overhangs, not particular smooth, not overly smooth, not overly rough. It was a nice finish. If the outlet pipe is not sealed well into the pit, you can still create this preferential flow path that slowly erodes everything out from the base, and eventually everything slumps in. So those are the two problems you've got to watch out for there that most commonly cause that. If you've got subsidence around an outlet pit, look for those two things in the first instance, and then take it from there. If you don't have either of those problems, you're going to need to get a little bit more creative. You're going to need to sleuth around a little bit more. But if you've got those particular two, you know that you're on the right track to finding out what's going on. Sweet. Thank you for tuning in. As always, if you have ideas, comments, you want to get involved in this conversation here on Ideanthro, by all means hit us up, by all means get in contact, because we'd love to hear from you. There's a few ways that you can find us. You can find us online at www.ideanthro.com. We have a contact page there. You can find out how to contact us through that. You can also find us on YouTube, where we post all the videos. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Ideanthro, and we have been getting more active on LinkedIn. I've been posting all the Ideanthro videos through LinkedIn as well, so you can find us there. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Have a good day.